I'm Don Tapscott.
And I'm Alex Tapscott.
And this is What's on Tap. Alex, what a week. Every week is amazing in the blockchain, crypto, digital asset space. There's a lot going on this week with NFTs. I note our member and collaborator WiseKey is turning patents into NFTs and storing them on a identity blockchain network, kind of a good application. Of course, the really big one was our good friend and collaborator, Tim Berners-Lee. Sotheby's announced that it will be auctioning off an NFT of the original source code of the World Wide Web, which, according to the House, is the first digital-born artifact to come to auction. And so TBL, it's a wonderful thing. He's into blockchain, and he's collaborated with us, of course, over the years, most recently on the report that we did for Biden-Harris. And his biggest concern has been how to enable the users of the web to capture their own data. And he has a layer, a technology that he's adding to the web called Solid as a way of doing that. But it doesn't use blockchain. So, of course, we've had some good discussions about that. But now he's jumped full 2 feet first right into the whole blockchain space with this NFT initiative. Just quoting him here, NFTs, be they artworks or a digital artifact like this, are the latest playful creation in this realm and the most appropriate means of ownership that exists. They're an ideal way to package the origin of the web, says TBL. So what's going on with NFTs, and what do you make of this one?
Well, we had a bit of an NFT craze in the first quarter of this year with NBA Top Shots and culminating, I think, with the digital artist Beeple selling a work of art through Sotheby's for $69 million. And in the past month or so, there's been a bit of quiet, and I think a lot of people are questioning those purchases of digital art that were going for high prices. And usually it's right after when people start to questioning it that you start to see the actual real world use cases and examples of this, changing industries in really profound ways. Sir Tim's choice of words is appropriate, playful thing. It's true that a lot of innovations start as fun and playful initiatives. And I think NFTs are no different. The first NFTs, as we know, were for crypto kitties, collectible digital cats like Tamagotchis or Pokemons. But now more recently, we've seen it begin to impact the world of fine art, the world of sports collectibles. And now I think this is kind of a crossing of the Rubicon, so to speak, where NFTs are being applied to IP. Now, this NFT does not provide the owner any specific, rights of ownership over the IP. That IP is in the public domain, of course, but it is a collectible that certainly a lot of enthusiasts would love to own. And there's no reason why the NFT couldn't ascribe certain rights. I mean, ultimately, an NFT is a smart contract, a piece of code that runs on a blockchain. You can already program NFTs to have, trailing revenue rights, for example, for the original creator of the art, resale rights, and so forth. There's no reason why you couldn't also ascribe, certain usage rights as well to an NFT for the usage of IP. So to me, there's no greater endorsement from my view, for the second era of the internet than from the father of the first era of the internet, or at least the first sort of the World Wide Web, which is obviously the first major use case of the internet. So I'm very excited by this announcement. I'm hopeful that it's Sir Tim's first foray into this, that he's caught the bug, and that we'll see more and more from him in the blockchain world. And then maybe he does consider this technology as foundational to this initiative that he has about data and the internet. Ultimately, it's true that the first era of the internet is a wonderful resource and has transformed our economy in profound ways. But it's also true that most of the economic value has been captured asymmetrically by a handful of large companies, and that individual anonymity and freedom on the web that was, I think, first promised in the cypherpunk manifesto didn't really come true. So maybe there's another shot, another kick at the can here to rewrite how this system works. And obviously, our view is that blockchain is foundational to that.
Yeah, one of the other benefits, if you like, of this announcement is that it reminds people on where this particular innovation actually came from. And we have so many big developments in technology that people just kind of lose track of what their origins were. I read an article recently about who invented the mouse. Give me a break. I was there at Stanford Research Institute with Douglas Engelbart in 1978, watching him use a mouse. Douglas Engelbart invented the mouse. There's no question about that. And this article is kind of going on and on about the different theories on that. And the same thing, I read an article this week about how tech needs a whole new narrative. The whole disruption narrative is kind of declining now, and we need to move into a new post-pandemic narrative around building, especially with the bad rap that tech is getting. And here you have TBL. I'm reading this article. The source code is approximately 10,000 lines and is written in languages Berners-Lee invented. What are these languages, you wonder? HTML, HTTP, and URLs, which are uniform resource identifiers.
I think I've heard of some of those things.
Yeah, he actually invented this stuff. So it's kind of a good reminder. Maybe NFTs can be used in other ways for people to appropriately claim their due heritage.
Well, one other point that I'll just make on that, which is I think that he said, the internet is a digital creation, and what more appropriate way to store that creation than in a digital medium. And then he said that it's the best way that you can store information today. And I think that's kind of important and is kind of foundational to a lot of what it is that we focus on, that information that exists in the public domain and ought to survive through the eons. Do we really want it stored inside servers owned by private corporations or even by governments? Is there a way to decentralize that information and ensure that it gets stored forever? And so NFTs, I think, are an example of how this is being put into practice. Another example that I've been spending a lot more time on is Filecoin. Filecoin was this system that was launched funded in 2017, launched in 2020 to create the IPFS, Interplanetary File System, basically a decentralized storage network that harnesses the latent computing power and latent storage capability of all the vast array of computer systems that we have in the world and individual devices to create a network that cannot be censored, cannot be shut down, and can survive, through business cycles and through company changes and so forth. And I think that it's just fascinating that we're starting to see so many of these innovations that we really speculated about in our early research for the book and the stuff that followed, really actually playing out. So it's an exciting time, that's for sure.
Yeah, and anyone who wants to read about NFTs, a good source book is Blockchain Revolution, written 6 years ago. It has a whole chapter on how blockchain could be used for art and culture. Of course, it goes beyond that now as well.
Speaking of exciting, tax.
Sounds good. Oh,
I hear that you have become a tax expert, and that, but in all seriousness, that recently you spoke at an event with some of the leading tax authorities from 60 countries in the world about crypto, blockchain, and tax. Now, in my side of things over in the investment world, when people talk about tax and crypto, it's usually about taxing capital gains on crypto and to figure out what the meaning of these assets are from a tax liability perspective. But that's not what this discussion was about at all. This was about something bigger than that. And I think it's important that people understand not only that, this is an asset that can go up and down, these are assets that can go up and down, and sure, there may be taxes on that, but that the underlying technology itself could be foundational to rethinking how we do tax. So why don't you talk about that for a bit?
Well, I have to tell you, Alex, this event kind of blew me away. And sometimes you show up to give a speech. I think about showing up at the Business Council, and there are 130 of the CEOs of the 150 biggest companies in the US. In the front row is Jeff Bezos and Satya Nadella, and you name it. And I showed up at this one. There are tax authorities from 60 different countries that are there, along with the heads of tax for Ernst & Young and a bunch of the big accounting companies. And the topic of this entire half-day online session was transforming tax systems with blockchain. And I did the opening talk to it. So I actually had to spend some work on this. And I knew that a lot was going on. The BRI has done some work in this area, but I was quite struck by the opportunity and how, sure, everything is complex, but there's some real simple opportunities that exist here. And so I scoped out 10 of them, actually. I'm not going to go through them all now, but just something like a payroll tax. Okay, everybody, don't fall asleep on me here.
It's like when we talk about accounting, triple entry bookkeeping.
Well, that's one of them.
Yeah.
For a nap. But this is important stuff because if you think about it, this is how we fund the common good. Now, sure, you can have lots of criticisms about governments and our leaders and so on, but we need to cooperate together through government to solve all kinds of common problems. And we need to be able to fund that. The tax system is full of a million problems, all these different authorities that don't communicate with each other. Big corporations are able to avoid paying all kinds of tax. There's all kinds of fraud and tax avoidance and other things that are happening. But look at something like payroll tax. This is a huge hassle for a lot of companies, calculating all of this and trying to get it right. And with a blockchain system, simple. Okay, here's how it works. The employer inputs the gross amount of his salary into the system, and then you have this blockchain-based platform that's limited to the tax administration, banks, other necessary parties, and the tax data is matched with the payment by a smart contract, and it calculates the tax and the social security amounts. Bada bada bing. The net salary is automatically transferred to the employee, and the tax to the government. Done. This whole thing eliminates companies as being the intermediaries in having to calculate this kind of tax. You could have a higher metabolism system, real-time payments. You could have much greater efficiency, save a ton of time. It could be way more secure. You could eliminate fraud in this area. You could have all kinds of reliable historical tax records and so on. And actually, I remember at Davos in 2016, there was a survey conducted of a bunch of leaders in this area, 800 of them actually, and they estimated that this would really kick in around 23 to 25, 2023. So now's the time for big governments and other public institutions to get going on this. I'll spare our audience today going through the other 10, but although this webinar is going to be available, and it's actually quite juicy stuff. But I talk not only about income tax, but about VAT. The same kind of thing could happen. You get rid of all the intermediaries. Customs and trade, you think about all the trains and boats and planes and trucks and escrow agents and tax authorities and all this stuff's moving around with paper and cash and EDI and traditional ERP systems and phone calls and faxes. And imagine if there were a shared network state where the tax was appropriately paid as part of all of the movement of goods, trade finance. Be incredible. You mentioned triple entry accounting. You know more about this than I do, but I mean, double entry accounting was the foundation of the corporation in capitalism. Triple entry accounting, you can have a real-time balance. So, governments all around the world, the the auditor general or something like that comes in a year later and finds inappropriate spending in some area 9 months ago. Well, if you had a blockchain-based accounting system for governments, that the auditor general would discover something at Tuesday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because there'd be a real-time audit
Right.
was occurring. So you can
Well,
pay taxes with crypto. There are, if moving, of course, to central bank digital currency is going to be a really big deal. So there are all kinds of opportunities here.
Well, that's so interesting. And you talked about the potential benefits for business, but also alluding to the potential benefits for the tax authorities themselves. And I'm reminded of a quote from Blythe Masters, who is a collaborator, and I think people know has a long and storied career in the financial industry. And she said that what she found most interesting was that blockchain could allow regulators to use a, quote, lighter touch. That with more perfect information, it doesn't mean that they're getting more information in the sense that they are getting information they shouldn't be getting, or private personal information. It's just that they have a better snapshot of the network state of all, money owed and outstanding, would allow them to actually maybe regulate with a lighter touch. And I always thought that was interesting. Now, I think that it's a promise that has not yet been fulfilled. If anything, the touch is getting heavier, but it's still something that I think holds very true.
It could lead to a whole new paradigm in regulation, where transparency, is the powerful force ensuring appropriate behavior. It's like I said, Naked Corporation, well, it's 20 years ago now, that sunlight is the best disinfectant. And, that when you have transparency, organizations are kind of naked. They need to be buff in the sense that they need to, behave appropriately. So this is like a really big opportunity. Another one I'll just mention that people don't think about is that tax authorities and regulators, for that matter, need to think about not just how do we collect this money and avoid fraud and all the rest of that, but what can we do as government leaders to encourage the growth of the innovation economy and prosperity so that there will be more revenue for government. And, if Silicon Valley was the center of the first era of the Internet of Information, where is the center of the second era going to be? Could it be in your country? Now, of course, it won't just be in one country, but you can build a powerful ecosystem that's an engine. And then that ecosystem, technology, is not the whole economy. It's the foundation of the whole economy. So imagine the kinds of things that can be done to encourage companies, big and small, all kinds of institutions to be embracing this technology, to build higher performance institutions and to have better innovation. I'll tell you, Alex, one of the things I found myself getting into was your original idea about applying this great Canadian innovation of flow-through shares to funding innovation in countries around the world. That was kind of a juicy thing to raise. We've written about this quite extensively. I don't know if you want to say a word about it, but.
Well, it's true that flow-through shares are something that have been successful. I think for the audience, just who may not be Canadian, basically it's a way to invest pre-tax dollars into promising young businesses. And in Canada, it's always been confined to promising young businesses in the resources sector, so mining and so forth. Not crypto mining. I mean, like pickaxe mining. But there's no reason why you couldn't offer incentives like that for investors to invest in other kinds of startups. The challenge has always been how to ensure that the money that's being raised for those companies is going for its intended purpose. The purpose in resources is to discover new resources under the ground, which means drilling, basically. And in technology, the equivalent of drilling would be, R&D or product development. And it's important that, for the tax authorities at least, that they see that the money being raised is going to that intended purpose. Well, you could with the kind of system that you're talking about, with payroll tax and other kinds of internal financials inside of a business, determine how money is being used, where it's being used, and even actually put it into like a digital escrow in a smart contract and say they can only be released if it's being spent on specific purposes, for example. And you could use that basically immutable record as a way to ensure that tax deferred dollars were going to their intended purpose, right? And that's not something that can be unique to this country. By the way, I should add that like flow through shares for 50 years have been immensely helpful in making Canada and the Canadian capital markets a global leader in the resources industry. But that's, and I think they should continue, but that's the old world. Now we're talking about the digital world. We shouldn't be mining just gold and other materials out of the earth. We should also be, mining for IP, mining for human talent, and so forth. And the way to do that is to direct dollars towards it. Hey, just in the interest of time here, there's one other thing I know we want to talk about, which is that, and this is a great example of an enterprise use case for blockchain, and the EBAs, the Enterprise Blockchain Awards, which we've now hosted for a couple of years in a row. Last year, all virtually via hologram. In partnership with Art Media. That awards ceremony was a huge success. It won the award for the best virtual summit of the year, and it's back by popular demand. So tell us about what's on tap with the EPAs.
Yeah, well, I'll just end with a couple of announcements. So, the award was the BizBash Award, which is the big awards in North America, for an online award ceremony. We were very proud. It was pretty cool. We were beamed onto the stage with holograms, and you can see that at on the web if you type in Enterprise Blockchain Awards. We're doing it again, and the first year it was fun being a hologram, but it was more fun being at that black tie ceremony in Toronto. We flew in Imogen Heap from London, of course, Grammy-winning singer-songwriter, and she performed. It was kind of magic. I put together a band, as you'll remember, called the Beatcoins.
Mm-hmm.
You can't make that up. I was looking at the video recently, and the announcer said, "And now, introducing the Beatcoins with a live original song called the Blockchain Revolution Blues." And then he jokes, "No pictures, no video, no photos." Anyway, and I got a couple of dogs barking in the background. They're trying to tell me to wrap it up. So this year, seriously, we have the Enterprise Blockchain Awards, and the deadline for submission is going to be the end of July. And there are a bunch of different categories for that. And you can go to blockchainrevolutionglobal.com now to learn about those. And there are two groups. There are individual awards for leadership, and there are also enterprise awards in a number of big categories. The other thing I'll mention is Platform Revolution, edited by me. It's now available on Amazon.com for pre-order. And the actual book will be released on October 14th. So that's what's on tap for this week.
Great. See you next week.
Okay, take care.
Take care. Bye.